Hey guys, this is Alpha back for another video. Today we'll be reviewing the 2.4 Spiral Abyss, and I'll be giving you guys some tips and tricks of how to beat it. In this video particularly, I'll just be focusing my attention on floor 11 and 12 because floor 9 and 10 has been the same ever since. Now let's start with the Blessing of the Abyssal Moon. This one really helps people who like to normal attack. Raiden Shogun likes to normal attack. Your Catalyst users, your bow users like Child Yoimiya, they all love to auto attack. This one helps them. Charge attack, so people like Kuching, people like Ayaka who love to charge attack, and plunges, so that's obviously for Xiao. Characters like this you want to try to utilize in this Spiral Abyss because they really help capitalize on the Blade Flourish. With that out of the way, let's begin with floor 11. First of all, let's talk about the Leyline Disorder. So the Leyline Disorder right now is normal attacks increased by 50. So like I said, characters that love to spam auto attacks, mainly your Catalyst users, and your bow users, they really love this. Some other users are maybe Kuching if you don't use charge attack, which is a little weird, or maybe Raiden Shogun as well, who when used a burst or normal attack. Anyway, for chamber 1, nothing too particular you have to take note. For the Ruin Cruisers and Destroyers, if you walk up to them, they should target you, and the Ruin Destroyer should pretty much do the same. Now for the second half is a little tricky because there's the Electro Abyssal Mage and the Lava Trolls, and they just love to attack it. So what you want to do for the Abyssal Mage is you just want to run up to it, and I'm pretty sure the Heliotros will run to you as well. If they don't, what you can do is you can run to the Heliotros itself first, one by one, and then go to the Electro Abyssal Mage. And then after you kill the Abyssal Mage and the Heliotros, the Lava Troll will spawn. So the Thunder Helm will spawn. It will always charge towards you as long as you aggro it. So if you aggro it, what you should do is run away from the defense, and you should be completely fine. If not, you might charge into the defense, and that will just really hinder the process. By the way, for this floor, second half, I recommend Pyro characters to break the shields for the Electro Abyss Mage and the Lava Trolls. Alright, for the second chamber, we have Slimes in the first one. So we have Pyro Slimes and Electro Slimes. What I recommend for this one is don't bring any of these two elements. If you're planning to one-shot this run, so you're planning to do chamber 1, 2, and 3 at the same time, try not to bring Pyro characters and Electro together in the same team. If not, you'll be running into this problem of fighting this guy. Obviously, if you were to run Raiden National Team, it might still work, but it's a little clunky. So try to not bring both in the same team. If not, you'll have troubles here. But anyway, this one is pretty easy. The second half, the one you have to look out for is the Hydro Mimic Raptor. This dude is flying, so you want to try to find a character that can hit our air units. From the chamber 1, we discussed bringing Pyro characters, so something like Klee, Yanfei, Yoimiya, these characters that can hit the air, those characters you want to try bring for the Mimic Raptor. Another solution is you can try to swirl it with Sucrose, but if your Sucrose is not DPS, which 99% of the Genshin community isn't using, then I don't recommend bringing it. You can also bring Geo characters like Ningguang to try to hit it, but yeah, it's a little tricky because you need to use her burst. I don't know if her auto attack can hit the air as effectively as the other characters I've mentioned. But other than that, it's pretty cool, so just try to bring Pyro character. You will really benefit a lot in this chamber and in this floor. So for the last floor, or rather the last chamber, the first half is pretty much standard. You want to try kill the Kairagi at the same time, because if you can kill them at the same time, they won't like transfer their HP to the other person. And for the Mirror Maiden, it's pretty standard. You just hit her as much as possible. She's pretty chunky, so just to beware. And for the Manifestation, so similarly, Pyro characters are really good. Don't bring Electro for this one. Swirl is not so effective because when you swirl Electro most of the time, and you want to try to swirl Pyro. Lastly, Geo also works, so any character like Ningguang work, Arataki Ito maybe not. Try to bring a character that can hit units that are flying. That wraps it up for floor 11, my recommended team. First half, what I brought was Shunhee. I brought Mona. Where is Mona? I brought Diana and Ayaka. So I brought a really standard freeze team. It really helps against the Ruin Raiders, they don't move. And against the Kairagi, you freeze them and just one-shot them. For the second half, what I brought initially was this comp right here. I brought a Yanfei comp, which is really good. You can definitely run this comp and you can beat it no problem. Another comp that I tried testing it and it actually worked was the Xiao National comp. I will be doing a video on this in the future, so stay tuned for it. For the Yanfei comp, you can sub Yanfei out for Yoimiya, for Klee, doesn't matter. This slot right here, typically you try to bring a Hydro character, Xingqiu's the best, but if you have Mona you can use her as well. Why not? You can do something like a Melt comp, but I don't really recommend that with range characters itself. Alright, so now for floor 12, this one is a little interesting. Let's go over the Leyline Disorder first. So what the Leyline Disorder does is, at the start, they will have this physical and elemental res. So these are resistance. they lose these stacks when you hit them with normal attacks. So they lose 3% of this. At a maximum of 30% may be lost. That means, in a sense, shredding 20% physical resistance and 20% elemental resistance. So what does this mean? This means attack as much as possible so that you're basically shredding their defenses. Why is this essential? When you shred their defenses, you'll be doing so much more damage. And there's a few ways you can capitalize on this. But also do note, it resets every 20 seconds, so you need to make sure you try to keep hitting them. Right, so let's go through each chamber. The first chamber, in my opinion, is by far the most trickiest one, because you'll be fighting this perpetual mechanical array. It used to be on chamber 3, which had 2 million HP on top of the 700,000, I think, HP of the vulnerable cores it had. You are forced to fight that vulnerable phase of his, where he splits into 4 cores. And when you do that, you basically have a 2 in 4 chance or 1 in 2 chance to get a bad roll on the vulnerable part. As you know, he splits into 4 parts, and there's 2 parts you don't want to fight. The first part is the snake head, the one that looks like a snake, and the second one is the one that puts up a shield. One that puts up a shield basically reduces the damage you do to it. And the snake one is a little tricky as well, because sometimes it burrows on the ground and it's very annoying because it stalls for like 2 to 3 seconds. Other than that, my advice is try to do it in 1 rotation, beat it as hard as you can, get to the vulnerable phase, and then finish up the process. You don't want to go to 2 vulnerable phases, if not you literally have no time for the second half to hit the 3-star. For the second half, we have 2 pyro shields here, and the dendro summatrals and whelps. So the whelps spawn at the start. Generally, it's very easy to kill them if you have Mona to taunt, or any character to taunt. The reason why I recommend Mona is because you can use Mona to beat these Pyro Abyss Mage and the Abyss Raptor really easily by burning through the shield. One tip I have is make sure you kill the Dendro Summatral first. If not, he's gonna be a real nuisance when you try to kill the Abyss Mage and the Abyss Lector by putting his Construct. If these Construct catch fire, they do a lot of damage. Alright, in the second chamber, we have the Primo Geobishop and the Abyssal Herald. I think the note is there's actually 2 Heralds, not 1, so you want to try to clump them up. But anyway, for the Primo Bishop, he has that phase for the first 8 seconds or so, where you don't do 100% of your damage output to him. You can use this phase to stack the Leyline Disorder by hitting him as much as possible before he gets to that phase where he's ready to fight. By doing that, you actually reduce his res, and you have like a 12-second window to beat him as hard as possible before his res comes back, and you have to repeat the cycle over again. For the second half, we have the Abyss Herald's Wicked Torrent. So this one, there's actually 2 of them, like I said earlier. So you need to make sure that you clump them up and beat them up at the same time. So if you're using a freeze team, it's really good. For those who thought of bringing a Hydro carry in the second half, because of Chamber 1, you can't really use it here. Although you can bring Hydro carry with a Cryo support or Cryo carry, secondary carry, to beat the second half of Chamber 2. It's really up to you, but just make sure that you don't bring too much Hydro, if not you can't deal with the Heralds later on. Also, one tip to note is, if you have lack of characters in these floors, if you have a named character, you can use him or her. So something like Sucrose, Venti, Xiao, Ji, and Kazuha, they're all really good in cracking the shield. That's actually a lot of people don't know, but you can actually use them as well. Geo is not so effective, but if you're really desperate, you can 100% use Geo as well. It really helps as well. Alright, for the last chamber, this one is probably the easiest chamber out there. Just make sure you clump up the Ruin Guards, make them walk up to you, and you can AoE them. The Ruin Greeter is pretty much the same. Now for the Mago Kenki, if you're running freeze team for the first 2 chambers, you can't actually freeze this guy. I think we all know that already. So just try to have 100% uptime on your main DPS for this one. And also make sure that you also have bursts ready to iframe his big hits. So the one where he slams the ground and the whole world explodes, you want to make sure you have at least a burst to make sure you can iframe it. And my last tip to all of you guys, if you're really struggling in the 2.4 Abyss, you don't have to go and do all these 3 chambers in one run. You can make a team specifically cater to each chamber. So let's say in chamber 1 you're running Child Carry. Chamber 2, you can use the time here as long as you 3-star this. You can use the time here to farm up your bursts. Chamber 2, go and do it again. Make sure you use all your bursts here. And if you really can't use the team in chamber 2, to do the chamber 3, repeat the process. Just make sure you farm burst and make sure you're healthy enough to carry on to the next chamber. With that, I will be showing you my comp I run for floor 12. My first comp is the Raiden national teams, so something like this. So I ran this comp for the first half of chamber 12. It's a really good comp. It can eat through the perpetual array as long as you do your rotation properly. AoEs really well into the Ruin Guards and Graders at the end. For the second half, I brought a team like this. It's standard freeze team So I brought something like this with Shunhee as an additional character in my new freeze team. You don't have to bring Shunhee, you can bring something like Venti. This comp works as well. But other than that, those are the two comps that I highly recommend and I find that are most successful for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like and comment down what kind of video you would like to see in the future and what team comps I should cover in the future as well. If you like content like this, do subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing more like this in the future, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.